Flames devour the Desert Rose Saloon as 6 outlaws laugh, passing a bottle of stolen whiskey. They just made the deadliest mistake of their lives. The quiet woman they mocked, the one whose business they're burning to the ground, isn't just another saloon owner. Sarah Hawkins is the most feared bounty hunter in the American West. 15 years, hunting the territory's worst killers, earned her a name that makes hardened outlaws tremble. The Shadow's Edge. 112 bounties claimed, 73 men dead. Not because she had to kill them, because they were foolish enough to draw against her. Tonight, the Walker gang learns why smart men still whisper her name in fear. The flames illuminate her silhouette as she steps from the shadows, gun hand hovering near her hip. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 days earlier, Sarah Hawkins wiped down the Desert Rose's weathered bar with practiced efficiency, her calloused hands moving in the same pattern they had for the past 2 years. The afternoon sun slanted through dusty windows, catching. The silver threads in her dark hair earned more from 15 years of hunting than her 37 years of life. The saloon was quiet, just old Jim Cooper nursing his usual whiskey in the corner. His presence was as reliable as the sun rising, there every day since Sarah bought the place. He never mentioned recognizing her, though the scar on his cheek, left by a bullet she'd put through his brother during a bounty gone sideways, told her he knew exactly who she was. "Trouble's brewing, Miss Sarah," Jim muttered, eyes fixed on his glass. "Walker gangs moved into the territory. 3 ranches burned last week. 2 men dead." Sarah's hand paused imperceptibly on the bar. The Walker gang, 7 men, led by Marcus. Walker, a name with $5,000 in bounties attached to it. Once, that would have made her blood sing with anticipation. Now it just made her tired. "Sheriff handle it?" she asked, voice carefully neutral. Her right hand hadn't strayed near the Colt, hidden beneath her apron in months. She intended to keep it that way. Jim snorted. "Sheriff Brady's about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. Word is he's taking Walker's money to look the other way." The saloon's batwing doors creaked open, admitting Thomas Miller, the banker's son. Young, eager, and completely unaware that the woman who served him beer had once collected a $1,000 bounty on his uncle. He smiled at Sarah, that same hopeful look he wore every day. "Afternoon, Miss Hawkins. Your usual crowd's mighty. He thinned today." Sarah poured him as usual without being asked. "Most folks staying close to home, I expect, given the news." Thomas leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "You heard about the Walkers, then? Pa says they're just passing through. Says we shouldn't worry." "Your pa's a fool," Jim growled from his corner. "Walkers don't pass through. They take over. Seen it happen in 3 towns already." Sarah watched Thomas's face fall, saw the fear creep in. She remembered that look from 100 faces, good people terrorized by men who thought violence made them powerful. Once she would have already been saddling her horse, checking her rifle, preparing to hunt. But she'd buried that life. Buried it with the last man she'd killed when she realized she was becoming just another kind of predator. The doors swung open again. This time, the afternoon light silhouetted a figure Sarah hadn't seen in years. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a U.S. Marshal's badge catching the sun. "Been a long time, Shadow," Marshal Daniel Blake said quietly, using a name she'd hoped never to hear again. The few patrons in the saloon fell silent. Even Jim Cooper's glass stopped halfway to his lips. "Don't call me that," Sarah replied, her voice carrying an edge that made Thomas Miller step back instinctively. "What do you want, Daniel?" "Got a wire from Territorial Governor. Walker gangs working their way through every town between here and Santa Fe. Burning, killing, taking what they want." He placed a wanted poster on the bar. Marcus Walker's face sneered up at them, the reward now doubled to 10,000. "Governor's authorized me to offer reinstatement, full marshal's authority. We both know you're the only one who can stop them." Sarah's Fingers traced the wood grain of her bar. She'd built this place to escape what she used to be, built it with money earned from death, trying to create something that brought people together instead of putting them in the ground. "I'm retired," she said firmly. "Find someone else." Daniel's face hardened. "There is no one else. And you know damn well retirement's not an option in our line of work." "Not really. The shadow always catches up." Sarah turned away, shelving a clean glass with deliberate care. "Door's that way, Marshall. Don't let it hit you on the way out." He lingered for a moment, then left without another word. The silence he left behind felt heavy as a coffin lid. "Miss Sarah?" Thomas's voice quavered slightly. "What did he mean, calling you Shadow?" She looked at the young man, seeing the same innocence she'd lost so long ago. "Some questions are better left unasked, Thomas. Best head home now. It's getting late." As the sun set outside, Sarah watched her few remaining patrons filter out. Soon it would be just her and Jim Cooper again, keeping their silent vigil. She touched the Colt hidden beneath her apron, feeling its familiar weight. She had chosen peace, chosen to stop being the shadow that brought death. But as she looked at Walker's sneering face on the wanted poster, a cold certainty settled in her gut. Whether she chose it or not, violence was coming, and deep down, a part of her she'd tried to bury was already calculating sightlines, planning ambush points, remembering the familiar dance of dealing death. Some legends never die, they just sleep. And Sarah Hawkins had been sleeping for far too long. That night, after the last patron stumbled home, Sarah walked the familiar path to her small house behind the saloon. The desert wind carried voices from town. Too many people still awake, too much fear in the air. She'd learned to read a town's mood like others, red weather, and right now, Paradise Wells was a thunderstorm about to break. In her bedroom, she knelt beside a heavy trunk pushed against the wall. The key hung around her neck, untouched for 2 years. Inside lay the tools of her former trade, a Winchester rifle that had claimed more lives than she cared to count, twin Remington revolvers worked smooth by years of use, and a leather duster, still bearing bullet holes and bloodstains. Beneath the weapons lay wanted posters, her trophies, though she'd never called them that. Each face on those yellowing papers represented a choice, a moment when she'd decided who deserved to die. The responsibility had weighed heavier with each kill until she couldn't carry it anymore. A knock at her door startled her from dark memories. She closed the trunk, noting how her hands automatically checked for weapons she no longer carried. Old habits. Mary Chen stood on her porch, cradling her infant son. The young widow ran the boarding house down the street, and her eyes were red from crying. "They came to the boarding house," Mary said without preamble. "Walker's men. Said they're buying my property. Said if I don't sell, accidents happen." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Come in." She made tea while Mary settled into a kitchen chair, the baby sleeping against her shoulder. 2 years ago, Sarah had helped Mary escape her abusive husband, found her this new life in Paradise Wells. Now another kind of violence threatened to take it all away. "How many came?" Sarah asked. 3. The one in charge, he had a scar. Mary's voice trembled. "Running from his left eye to his jaw," Sarah finished. "Jake Hawley used to ride with the Cassidy gang before turning enforcer for hire." Mary's eyes widened. "You know him?" "Brought in his brother 2 years back." Sarah didn't mention that. Bringing in had involved a shootout that left 3 men dead. "He's mean, but he's cautious. Won't move against you without orders." "Miss Sarah." Mary clutched her teacup. "People talk, you know, about who you used to be, what you used to do. People talk too much. They say you were the best, that you never lost a bounty once you took it." Sarah stood, walking to her window. The moon cast long shadows across the desert, and somewhere out there violent men were planning to destroy everything she'd built here. Everything good people like Mary had built. "That life's behind me," she said quietly. "Violence just breeds. More violence? I learned that the hard way. And what about when violence comes looking for you? Mary's voice hardened. For all of us. Before Sarah could answer, hoofbeats thundered down the street. Both women tensed, but it was only Thomas Miller riding past at a gallop, heading for his father's bank. His face was pale with fear, even in the moonlight. "They're coming!" he shouted as he passed. "Walker gang's riding in at dawn!" Sarah watched. Mary's face crumpled with fear, saw her clutch her baby tighter. All across town, lights were coming on as the news spread, fear traveling like wildfire. She thought of her trunk full of weapons, of the skills that lay dormant but not forgotten, of the name she'd earned, Shadow's Edge, and the responsibility that came with it. "Go home," she told Mary. "Lock your doors. Whatever happens tomorrow, stay inside with your boy." "What are you going to do?" Sarah's hand drifted to her neck, feeling the key that unlocked her past. "I'm going to tend my bar, same as always." But after Mary left, Sarah's steps carried her to the trunk again. The leather of her gun belt was still supple, the weight familiar as sin when she strapped it on. The Remingtons slid into their holsters like old friends coming home. In her mirror, a stranger looked back at her. Not the respectable saloon owner of the past 2 years, but the shadow that had haunted the worst men in the territory. The woman who could shoot the flame off a match at 20 paces and track a man across bare rock. "Just in case," she told. Her reflection, but the words rang hollow. Deep down, she knew, you could bury the violence, but it always clawed its way back to the surface. She spent the rest of the night cleaning her weapons, muscle memory taking over as she stripped and reassembled each piece. The familiar ritual calmed her, even as it awakened something she'd tried to forget. The cold clarity of a predator preparing to hunt. Dawn would bring violence to Paradise Wells. The only question was whether Sarah Hawkins, reformed saloon keeper, would stand aside and watch her town burn, or whether Shadow's Edge would emerge from retirement to remind the Walker gang why they should have checked whose saloon they were planning to burn. Dawn painted the desert gold as Sarah opened the desert rose, maintaining her routine despite the tension hanging over Paradise Wells. The streets were empty, except for a few nervous townspeople hurrying about their business, casting fearful glances toward the horizon. Jim Cooper arrived first, as always, but today his rifle rested across his knees rather than leaning in the corner. "Ain't your fight," Sarah said, placing his usual whiskey before him. "Way I figure it," Jim replied, checking his rifle's action. "My brother would have killed 3 more folks if you hadn't put that bullet in him. Reckon I owe you the Batwing." Doors swung open. Sheriff Brady swaggered in, his tin star polished bright against his dirty vest. 2 deputies flanked him, hands hovering near their guns. "Closing early today, Miss Hawkins," Brady announced. "Town council's orders, safety concerns." Sarah continued wiping glasses. "Town council doesn't own my business, Sheriff. Now see here." Brady's hand dropped to his gun, but froze at the look in Sarah's eyes. For just a moment, the saloon keeper vanished, replaced by something colder, deadlier. "That hand moves." "Another inch," she said quietly, "and we'll all learn if you're faster than the woman who outdrew Wild Bill Matthews." The deputies exchanged nervous glances. Everyone knew that story, how Matthews had challenged the infamous Shadow's Edge, claiming no woman could best him. They'd buried him the next day. Brady's face reddened. "This is your last warning. Walker. Gang's coming, and smart folks are staying out of their way." "Like you, Sheriff?" Jim spoke up. "Word is you're mighty smart when it comes to looking the other way, for the right price." "Watch your mouth, old man." "Or what?" Sarah's voice cut. Through the tension, "You'll arrest him, finally do your job. That'd be a nice change." Brady's hand trembled near his gun, but he didn't draw. Everyone in the room knew what would happen if he did. Instead, he spat on Sarah's clean floor and stormed out. His deputies scurrying after him. "He'll warn them about you," Jim said after they'd gone. Sarah nodded. "Good. Maybe they'll be smart enough to ride on by." But she knew better. Men like the Walker gang didn't back down, especially not from a woman. Their kind of evil festered in the wounds they inflicted on good people, grew stronger with each act of cruelty left unchallenged. The morning wore on. A few regulars drifted in, more to share worried whispers than to drink. Sarah served them, listening to fragments of conversation. 7 riders spotted at Mason's Creek, 3 hours out. Gangs grown to 15 men, burned the Henderson Ranch at dawn. Thomas Miller burst in around noon, his young face flushed with excitement and fear. "Miss Sarah, Pa says they're demanding protection money from all the businesses. Says if we pay, they'll leave us be." "Your pa's a banker," Sarah replied. "He should know better than to trust bandits." "But Miss Sarah—" "Thomas!" She fixed him with a hard stare. "Men like Walker don't stop taking once you start giving. First it's money, then it's dignity, then it's lives. You want to know what happens to towns that try to buy peace from predators? Ask Copper Creek, ask Redemption, ask any of the ghost towns that litter this territory." The young man paled. Everyone knew those names, towns that had disappeared into dust and memory after the Walker gang passed through. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Sarah felt the familiar stillness settle over her. The calm before violence. She'd felt it 100 times while tracking bounties, that moment when the hunt was almost over and blood was about to flow. Jim Cooper broke the silence. "You could ride out. Ain't no shame in it. This town didn't do you any favors, taking blood money for your drinks while whispering about your past." Sarah touched the bar's smooth wood, remembering the hours she'd spent refinishing it. The community, celebrations it had hosted, the friendships forged across its scarred surface. "This is my home," she said simply, "bought and paid for, and some things are worth fighting for." Through the window, she spotted riders on the horizon. Just specks, of dust yet, but growing larger. The Walker gang, coming to claim another town for their empire of terror. Sarah Hawkins, saloon keeper, reformed bounty hunter, protector of a town that feared her almost as much as they needed her, straightened her apron and touched the hidden Colt at her hip. The peace she'd built here had been an illusion. But perhaps, she reflected, it had been worth it just to remember what she was fighting for. The Walker gang didn't start with guns. They started with smiles. Marcus Walker himself strode into the Desert Rose first, all charm and polished leather, 6 men filing in behind him. Scarred faces under wide-brimmed hats, gun belts worn low, eyes that had seen too much killing to ever be clean again. "Well now," Walker drawled, surveying the nearly empty saloon. "Mighty fine establishment you got here, ma'am." His smile didn't reach his eyes. Those stayed cold, measuring everything they saw. "Heard you're the owner." Sarah kept wiping glasses, her movements unhurried. "That's right." Only Jim Cooper remained at his corner table, rifle still across his knees. The rest of her customers had melted away when the gang rode in. Walker pulled out a chair, the scrape against wooden floors loud in the silence. His men spread out, casual-like, hands never far from their guns. "See, me and my associates, we're businessmen, looking to invest in local establishments, provide protection, you might say." "Don't need protection," Sarah replied. Walker's smile tightened. "Oh, but you do. Dangerous times. Why, just last week, 3 businesses burned down over in Copper. Greek, tragic accidents." He pulled out a leather pouch heavy with coins. "Small weekly payment guarantees nothing unfortunate happens here." Sarah set down her glass. "That a threat?" "Business proposition." Walker leaned forward. "Smart folks take it. Others—" He shrugged. "Well, accidents happen." "Like Mary Chen's husband?" Sarah's voice carried an edge. "That accident where you beat a man to death for refusing to sell his land?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Walker's men tensed, hands drifting closer to weapons. "You seem well informed, Miss Hawkins." She met his gaze steadily. "Sarah Hawkins." Recognition flickered in Walker's eyes. The smile vanished. Shadow's edge. His hand moved fast as a snake, but Sarah was faster. Her hidden Colt appeared, hammer cocked, before he could clear leather. That would be a mistake, she said quietly. Walker forced a laugh, hands raising slightly. Now, boys, seems we've stumbled into quite a situation. The famous Shadow's Edge, running a saloon. His eyes narrowed. Heard you'd gone soft, religious maybe, found peace. Peace was a choice, Sarah replied. One you're making real hard to keep. Way I see it, Walker stood slowly. You got two choices. Take our offer, live quiet, or we burn this place down with you in it. The gang members spread wider, cutting off angles. 7 against 1, not counting Jim Cooper. Bad odds, even for her. Third choice, Sarah suggested. You ride out, find easier prey. Walker's laugh turned ugly. You think I'm afraid of some has-been bounty hunter? Times have changed, Shadow. West's getting civilized. Law's in our pocket now. You're just a relic. He turned to leave, then paused. You got 1 hour. Smart money says you run. After they left, Jim spoke up. They'll be back with more men. Sarah nodded. Get Mary Chen and the others to safety. Church basement, maybe. And you? She was already moving toward her back room. Got some things to take care of. In her bedroom, Sarah opened the trunk. The leather duster settled on her shoulders like old sin, heavy with memory and gun smoke. Twin Remingtons rode her hips now, the Winchester cradled in practiced hands. When she emerged, the woman who'd served drinks and sought peace was gone. Shadow's Edge walked in her boots, eyes sharp as razor wire, movements liquid with deadly grace. Exactly 58 minutes later, the Walker gang returned. 15 men this time, spreading out to surround the saloon. Walker's voice carried on. The wind, burn it! Oil splashed against wooden walls. Torches arced through the air. The desert rose. Sarah's attempt at a peaceful life began to burn. Inside, Sarah Hawkins checked her weapons one last time. Peace had been nice while it lasted, but some people only understood one language. Time to remind them why they used to whisper her name in fear. Flames licked the Desert Rose's walls as Sarah moved through smoke like a ghost. The gang expected her to either flee or die. Instead, she used their own fire as cover. The first outlaw died without a sound. Sarah's knife found his throat as he reloaded his torch, his body crumpling in the shadows behind the saloon. The second managed half a scream before a Remington bullet silenced him. By then, it was too late for warnings. Find her! Walker's voice carried over the crackling flames. 1,500 to the man who brings me her head, Sarah allowed herself. A cold smile. 1,500. That's what her life was worth to them. She'd collected bigger bounties on horse thieves. Through the smoke, she counted 12 men still standing, spreading out in pairs to search. Amateur mistake. She'd hunted men like this across 3 territories. Rule 1. Never split your forces. Against a superior opponent, a bullet whizzed past her head. One of Walker's men had spotted her shadow against the flames. She dropped and rolled, coming up behind a water trough as return fire splintered wood around her. Got her pinned, someone shouted. By the trough! Sarah's Winchester spoke 3 times. 3 men fell. No wasted shots, no hesitation. This wasn't about justice anymore. This was survival. Jesus Christ! The cry came from Jake Hawley, the scarred enforcer. That's 6 men down in 2 minutes. Walker's response was drowned by gunfire as his remaining men opened up on Sarah's position. But she was already moving, using techniques learned from 15 years of manhunting. Stay mobile, use cover, let them waste ammunition. Boss! One of the gang members pointed toward town. Riders coming. Sarah heard hoofbeats approaching. For a moment she feared Walker had more men in reserve. Then she recognized Jim Cooper's voice, bellowing like a bull. Deputies! Spread out! At least 8 horses thundered in from the darkness. Guns blazed, but no bullets flew. Jim had organized the townsmen, using the dark and noise to seem like a larger force. Walker's men broke formation, confused by the new threat. Sarah used their distraction to deadly effect. 2 more fell before they realized their mistake. The remaining outlaws scrambled for their horses. "Regroup at Carson's Ridge," Walker shouted, wheeling his horse around. "This ain't over, Shadow." Sarah emerged from cover, Winchester raised. One shot could end Walker right there, but experience stayed her hand. Wounded predators were the most dangerous. Better to let him run than hunt him properly. As the gang fled into darkness, Sarah surveyed the damage. Her saloon was still burning, though the flames hadn't reached the load-bearing walls yet. 6 of Walker's men lay dead or dying. No casualties. On her side, Jim Cooper rode up, leading a string of horses. Behind him, she recognized Thomas Miller, Mary Chen's brother, and other townspeople she'd served drinks to just hours ago. All armed, all looking at her with mixed fear and awe. "Couldn't let you face them alone," Jim said gruffly. "Gathered everyone who could shoot straight." Sarah nodded, touched by their courage even as she calculated how to use it. "Walker will be back, stronger next time." "Then we'll be ready," Thomas declared, trying to sound braver than he looked. Right? Sarah studied these people, shopkeepers, farmers, ordinary folks ready to fight. They deserved better than false hope. "No," she said finally, "you won't. Be not for what's coming. Walker's pride won't let this stand. He'll bring real killers next time. Men who know their business." "Then what do we do?" Mary Chen's brother asked. Sarah checked her weapons with practiced efficiency. "You get your families somewhere safe. I do what I should have done when they first rode in." "Which is?" Her voice carried the cold certainty that had made her legend. "I hunt them down. Every last one." As if to emphasize her words, part of the Desert Rose's roof collapsed in a shower of sparks. Sarah watched her attempt at a peaceful life burn away, replaced by the familiar clarity of the hunt. "Jim, I need information. Walker gang's usual haunts, known associates, any property they might use as hideouts." "I'll ask around," Jim nodded. "Still got friends in low places." "Thomas, your PR's bank records might show unusual transactions. Protection money leaves a trail." The young man straightened. "I'll check first thing tomorrow." Sarah strapped on her gun belt, adjusting the weight of the Remingtons. The familiar routine brought back memories of 100 other hunts. But this one was different. This wasn't about bounties anymore. "Miss Sarah?" Thomas's voice quavered slightly. "The stories about you, about Shadow's Edge, are they true?" She looked at him, remembering the naive young man who'd brought her flowers last spring. His innocence seemed a lifetime ago. The stories? A shell casing crunched under her boot. As she walked past him, they didn't tell the half of it. By dawn, Sarah's saloon was a smoldering ruin, but her mind was clear. She stood in her back room, spreading a weathered map across a table. 15 years of bounty hunting had taught her to catalogue every cave, canyon, and abandoned mine in the territory. Now those mental notes became marks on paper, possible hiding spots circled in ink. Jim Cooper entered, bringing trail dust and information. "Talk to some folks in the shadow business. Walker's got a camp up in Black Hawk Canyon. 20, maybe 30 men." Sarah marked the location. "Armed? Like an army. Word is they've been stockpiling. Winchester rifles, dynamite, even a Gatling. A gun. Preparing for war," Sarah mused. "Territory's getting civilized. Men like Walker know their time's running out." "There's more." Jim hesitated. "Jake Hawley's been asking questions. About you, about what happened in Tombstone." Sarah's hand stilled on the map. Tombstone, where she'd earned her reputation and her nightmares. "What do they know? Just rumors. That you took down the entire McCullough gang single-handed, that you tracked Jake's brother for 2 weeks across dead ground before putting him in the ground." A knock interrupted them. Thomas Miller entered, carrying bank ledgers, his young face pale with lack of sleep. "Found something," he said, spreading papers beside Sarah's map. "Pa's been recording payments to a mining company that doesn't exist. Carson Ridge Mining Corporation." Sarah traced the connection. "Carson's Ridge, where Walker ordered his men to regroup. There's more. Thomas pointed to various entries. Similar payments from every business in 3 towns, all filtered through. Shadow companies, all leading back to Walker. He's building an empire, Jim growled, using fear and corruption instead of bullets. Smart, Sarah admitted. Law can't touch him if everything looks legal on paper, Miss Sarah. Thomas's voice cracked slightly. What he did to your saloon. Why didn't you just pay? Would have been cheaper than rebuilding. Sarah checked her Winchester's action, the metallic click sharp in the quiet room. Because some things cost more than money, Thomas. Every dollar paid to men like Walker becomes a bullet in someone else's child. Every compromise feeds their power. She rolled up the map. Decision made. Jim, I need you to send telegrams. Call. In some markers. What kind of markers? The kind that owe Shadow's Edge their lives, or their freedom. She strapped on her gun belt. Thomas, those ledgers are evidence. Get them somewhere safe. Outside, the morning sun painted the desert gold. Sarah mounted her horse, the familiar weight of weapons and leather settling around. She'd spent 2 years trying to forget what she was. Now she embraced it. Where you heading? Jim called after her. Tombstone, she replied. Got an old friend there. Specializes in the kind of equipment we'll need. Thomas stepped forward. You're coming back then? Sarah turned in her saddle, studying the town she'd tried to call home. Good people living in fear, because men like Walker thought violence made them kings. Oh, I'm coming back, she said softly, and I'm bringing hell with me. 3 days later, Marcus Walker paced in his camp at Black Hawk Canyon, rage burning in his gut. 6 men dead. 6! And not in a fair fight, but picked off like rabbits by a woman they'd thought gone soft. Boss! Jake Hawley burst into the tent. Riders coming in from Tombstone. You need to hear this. The messenger, dust-covered and wild-eyed, babbled his news. Sarah Hawkins had been spotted. But she wasn't alone. 3 men rode with her, killers whose names made even Walker's blood run cold. John Deadeye McGill, the sniper who could hit a playing card at 400 yards. Samuel Hangman Hayes, former lawman turned mercenary. And worst of all, Michael Ghost Martinez, the Apache scout who'd learned tracking from his people before turning those skills to manhunting. She's calling in her markers, Hawley whispered. Every killer and tracker who ever owed Shadow's Edge a favor. Walker hurled his whiskey glass against the tent wall. She's one woman with a handful of has-been gunfighters. Boss, Hawley's voice shook slightly. You don't understand. These aren't just killers. These are legends, men who, I don't care if they're the 4 horsemen themselves, Walker roared. I won't let some woman destroy everything we've built. Send word to all our holdings. I want every gunman on our payroll here within the week and double the bounty on her head. But that night, as Walker lay sleepless in his tent, doubt gnawed at him. He'd thought Shadow's Edge was just another story, a legend built more on reputation than fact. Now he wondered if he'd wakened something better left sleeping. In the darkness outside his tent, a sentry's cry was cut suddenly short. By the time Walker grabbed his gun, 2 more guards had vanished, silently into the night. The hunt had begun, and Sarah Hawkins was teaching them, one death at a time, why smart men still whispered her name in fear. Dawn broke over Black Hawk Canyon, revealing 3 more of Walker's men hanging from a cliff edge. Each had a playing card pinned to his chest, the Ace of Spades, Shadow's Edge's calling card. Walker's remaining men crossed themselves, whispering about ghosts and vengeance, but Sarah Hawkins wasn't interested in vengeance. This was strategy, each death carefully staged to spread fear, each victim chosen to demonstrate there was nowhere Walker's men could hide. Psychological warfare, Deadeye McGill commented, watching through his rifle scope as Walker's men cut down their comrades. Just like Tombstone. Sarah cleaned her Remingtons with practiced care. Fear kills more surely than bullets. Walker built his empire on it. Time he learned how it feels. They'd made camp in a hidden canyon 2 miles from Walker's position. Ghost Martinez had found it, using tracking skills that seemed more magic than science. The Apache scout materialized from the shadows now, moving silent as smoke. Walker's sent riders to all his holdings, he reported, calling in every gunman on his payroll, offering 3,000 for your head now. Price keeps going up, Hangman. Hayes grinned, checking the rope coils on his saddle. Making us famous, Sarah. Fame's worthless, she replied. Information's what we need. Ghost, the tracker nodded, found their supply cache, ammunition, dynamite, enough weapons to arm 50 men. They're preparing for war. War implies both sides shooting, Deadeye said coldly. This is more like watching a wolf hunt sheep. Sarah spread her map, marking positions. 3 days of carefully planned strikes had reduced Walker's force by a quarter. But reinforcements would arrive soon, and the element of surprise wouldn't last forever. Jim Cooper's message came in, Hayes announced, holding up a telegram. Town's organizing, even got the sheriff locked up. Seems some interesting documents. Appeared proving his connection to Walker's operation. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Thomas Miller's bank ledgers had proved more deadly than bullets. A horse approached their camp, the specific rhythm of hoofbeats identifying Jim Cooper himself. He'd been coordinating between Sarah's hunters and the townspeople, keeping information flowing. Walker's getting desperate, he reported, dismounting. Sent men to threaten Mary Chen and her baby, trying to draw you out. Sarah's expression hardened. Mary safe? Got her and the child hidden in the old mission. Thomas Miller's organizing other families to protect them. Walker's showing his hand, Ghost observed. Desperate men make mistakes, or become more dangerous, Sarah countered. How many gunmen coming? At least 30, Jim said. Some real, ugly customers. Killers from down Mexico way, hunters from up north. Men who've heard of Shadow's Edge and want to make their reputation by taking you down. Sarah checked her ammunition. They'll die just the same. Sarah. Jim hesitated. Town's talking. About Tombstone. About what really happened there. The hunters went quiet. Tombstone was a wound none of them liked to prod. Tombstone's past, Sarah said flatly. This is now. But later, alone in her tent, she pulled out the newspaper clipping she always carried. Yellow with age, it told of the McCullough gang's last stand, 37 men dead in a single night. The official story said a combined force of lawmen had done it. The truth was darker. One woman, moving like a shadow through the night, dealing death with mechanical precision, not for justice, not for bounty, but because some men needed killing and she'd learned to be very, very good at it. A commotion outside broke her dark memories. Ghost had captured one of Walker's scouts, a young man barely 20, shaking with terror. But please, he stammered as Sarah approached. Walker sent me, said to deliver a message. Speak, he says, meet him. Noon tomorrow, Middle Street. Of Paradise Wells. Just you and him. End this proper. Sarah studied the boy, and if I refuse, says he'll burn every building in town, kill every person who helped you. Says he'll make it slow. The hunters exchanged glances. It was an obvious trap. Let him go, Sarah ordered. You're not considering his offer? Hayes demanded once the scout had fled. Course she is, Deadeye said quietly. Because that's what Shadow's Edge does, uses the enemy's traps against them. Sarah checked her weapons one final time. Gather everyone. Time to remind Walker why smart men don't make demands of legends. As night fell over the desert, both sides prepared. Walker fortified the town, positioning gunmen in windows and on rooftops. Sarah's hunters moved like ghosts through the darkness, setting their own pieces on the board. Tomorrow would end it, one way or another. Sarah watched the stars wheel overhead, remembering another night before another battle. Tombstone had made her a legend. Paradise Wells would either cement that legend or end it. Either way, there would be no more running from what she was, no more pretending at peace. Some people were born to violence, not because they loved it, but because they were damn good at it. And Sarah Hawkins was the best there'd ever been. Paradise Wells lay silent as a grave at dawn. Walker's men had cleared the streets, forcing townspeople into their homes at gunpoint. Sharpshooters lurked on rooftops, rifles glinting in the early light. The stage was set for slaughter. Sarah watched through Deadeye's spyglass from their hidden position. "Count, 47 shooters visible," the sniper reported. "More inside the buildings. They're expecting us to hit hard from the outskirts. Classic siege tactics." Ghost materialized from the shadows. "Found signs of dynamite rigged under the Main Street. They plan to blast us if we bunch up." Sarah handed back the spyglass. "Good." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Good means they're thinking like soldiers," she explained. "Preparing for an army, not a shadow." Jim Cooper rode up, his horse lathered from hard riding. "Sarah, got word from town. Walker's got Mary Chen." The temperature seemed to drop. Sarah's voice turned deadly quiet. "Where?" "Hotel. Top floor, using her and the baby as shields." The other hunters watched their leader carefully. They'd seen that look before in Tombstone, right before the killing started. "Change of plans," Sarah said. "Ghost, get me into town. Rest of you, be ready." "Sarah," Deadeye warned, "you go in alone. It's suicide." She checked her Remingtons. "Only if they see me coming." Ghost led her through hidden paths even Walker's scouts hadn't found. They passed 3 sentries who would never report again, Ghost's knife ensuring their silence. At the hotel's back door, Sarah paused. "Remember Tombstone," she told the Apache. "Tracker. When I signal, hit them hard. Make them look the wrong way." Inside, Sarah moved like smoke through empty corridors. 2 of Walker's men guarded the stairs. Both died without a sound, her blade precise. She could hear Mary's baby crying above. 3rd floor, 4 more guards. Sarah's first shot took the nearest in the throat. Before his body hit the floor, she was moving. 2nd guard reached for his gun, too slow. 3rd managed to fire, the bullet passing through the space she'd already left. 4th died, reaching for a whistle. Walker's voice carried through the door. "Hear that, Miss Chen? That's what mercy sounds like. Dying." Sarah kicked the door open. Walker held Mary in front of him, gun to her head. 3 more men had rifles trained on the baby in its cradle. "Shoulda stayed retired, Shadow," Walker sneered. "Now drop those guns or—" Sarah's hands moved faster than thought. First shot took Walker's ear off. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th dropped his men before they could blink. 5th bullet knocked Walker's gun away as he screamed, clutching his bloody head. Mary grabbed her baby and ran. Sarah advanced on Walker, who scrambled back against the wall. "Wait! I got money. Connections, we can—" "Quiet." Sarah's voice could have frozen hell. "Ghost! Now!" Explosions rocked the town. Deadeye's rifle began its deadly song. Walker's carefully planned defense dissolved into chaos as Sarah's hunters struck from multiple directions. "Your men are dying," she told Walker. "Again, just like Tombstone." His eyes widened. "Tombstone? It really was you. 37 men, 38, counting their leader." She aimed between his eyes. "Want to know something funny? Back then I was just starting out, still learning my trade. Now I'm a whole lot better." "Sarah," Jim Cooper's voice carried from outside. "Walker's reinforcements are coming, 50 riders from the south." She smiled coldly. "Hear that? More men riding to die for you. But first—" Her finger tightened on the trigger. "First, I need you to understand something." "Please," Walker begged. "I'll leave, never come back." "Too late for that. See, you made 3 mistakes. First, you thought I was retired. Second, you burned my saloon. But your biggest mistake—" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You threatened a mother and her child. That's what the McCullers did. In Tombstone. Killed a family just to prove they could. Understanding dawned in Walker's eyes, followed by pure terror. "Wait!" The gunshot echoed across Paradise Wells. One more body for the desert to claim. But Sarah was already moving. The real battle was just beginning, and she had more lessons to teach about why some legends are best left alone. Paradise Wells erupted into war. Walker's reinforcements thundered into town, rifles blazing, only to find themselves riding into a carefully laid trap. Deadeye's precise shots dropped leaders from their saddles. Hangman Hayes had rigged buildings with explosive surprises. Ghosts carefully placed mirrors, blinded riders at crucial moments, but it was Sarah who truly terrified them. She seemed to materialize from thin air, dealing death with mechanical precision. 3 riders turned a corner to find her waiting. All 3 died before they could level their weapons. 4 more tried to flush her from a building, only to realize too late they were the ones trapped. Like watching a wolf hunt, Jim Cooper muttered from his position. He'd fought in the war between the states, but he'd never seen anything like this. "Not a wolf," Ghost corrected, appearing beside him. "Wolves hunt in packs. She hunts like a mountain lion. Alone, patient, deadly." A rider spotted them wheeling his horse around. Jim raised his rifle, but Ghost's thrown knife found the man's throat first. "Speaking of deadly," Jim commented. "Sarah saved my life in Tombstone," Ghost explained, retrieving his knife. "I was tracking the McCullers. Got careless. They caught me, started cutting pieces off." His face darkened at the memory. "She appeared like a spirit of vengeance. Killed 12 men in the time it takes to draw breath. Never seen anything like it. That why you came when she called?" "Partly, but also because Ghost vanished as more riders approached." Jim heard screams, then silence. The Apache reappeared, wiping his blade. "Because she hunts evil men. Not for money, not for fame, but because someone has to." Across town, Sarah moved through smoke and chaos like a ghost herself. Walker's men were well-armed, well-trained, and utterly unprepared for what they faced. They were used to bullying townspeople, not fighting someone who had turned violence into an art form. "Boss is dead!" The cry spread through their ranks. "Walker's dead!" Some tried to flee. Others, the real killers, turned more vicious. A group of them cornered Thomas Miller, who'd been helping evacuate families. They meant to make an example. Of him, Sarah's voice cut through the gunsmoke. "Let him go!" 5 hardened killers turned to find her standing in the street, Remingtons gleaming. They knew her reputation, knew what she'd done to Walker. But they were killers themselves, proud. "And 5 on 1, their leader sneered. "Even for Shadow's edge, those odds." Her first shot took him in the heart. Second and third dropped the men flanking him. Fourth caught another drawing his gun. The last man managed to fire and missed as Sarah seemed to flow around the bullet. Her final shot ended him. Thomas stared at the 5 bodies, then at Sarah. How do you move like that?" "Practice," she said simply. "Get to the church, help Mary Chen with the wounded." But as she turned away, a voice from her past froze her in place. "Still quick as ever, little sister." Sarah's blood ran cold. Standing in the smoke was a man she'd hoped never to see again. Tall, scarred, with eyes as dead as desert stones. William. Hawkins, her brother, the man who'd taught her to kill. William. Her guns remained steady, though her heart raced. "Thought you were still in prison. Got out early. Good behavior." His smile was a snake's smile. "Heard my sister had gone respectable, running a saloon of all things. Had to see for myself." "You're working for Walker?" William shrugged. "Was. Man's dead now. But this..." He gestured at the chaos around them. "This is the sister I remember, the one I trained, the one who turned out to be better at killing than her own teacher." "I'm nothing like you." "No." He moved closer. Every step calculated, predatory. "Tell that to the men you've killed. Tell That to the families of the McCullough gang. 38 men in one night? That's not justice, sister. That's talent. Sarah's jaw tightened. They killed innocent people. And you've killed guilty ones. But killing is killing. Blood is blood. His hands drifted toward his guns. Remember what I taught you. Only two kinds of killers in this world, the quick and the dead. The air seemed to crystallize between them. Two legends, two killers, teacher and student, brother and sister. Walk away, Sarah warned. I won't tell you twice. William's laugh was cold as a grave. Can't do that, sister. See, Walker wasn't just paying me money. He promised me something better. A chance to remind the world which Hawkins is truly the deadliest. His hands moved like lightning, but Sarah had always been faster. Always. Thunder rolled across Paradise Wells, not from the sky, but from the earth itself. Deadeye, watching. Through his scope, couldn't tell who drew first. The shots merged into a single devastating roar. When the smoke cleared, William Hawkins lay in the dust, 3 bullets in his chest. Sarah stood unscathed, though a bullet had creased her cheek. She knelt beside her brother as he gasped his last breaths. You were right, she whispered. Blood is blood. That's why this had to end. William's last words came out as a gurgle. Always the better killer. Sarah stood, wiping blood from her cheek. The battle still raged around her, but something had changed. The last threads connecting. Her to her old life lay dead in the dust. Time to finish this, once and for all. The sun set on Paradise Wells, painting the dead in shades of gold. 32 of Walker's men lay scattered through the streets. The rest had fled, carrying tales of Shadow's Edge's return. Tales that would make hardened killers think twice. About coming to this territory, Sarah stood in the ruins of her saloon, sifting through charred papers in Walker's saddlebags. Ghost and Deadeye watched the street while Hayes helped townspeople clear debris. Something's wrong, Sarah muttered, studying a letter she'd found. Jim Cooper approached, leading his horse. Wrong how? Walker was taking orders. She held up the partially burned paper. Regular correspondence with someone in Santa Fe, someone with money and influence. How can you tell? Paper's expensive, European make, and look at this seal. She pointed to a half-burned wax impression. That's real silver worked into it. Walker was a thug. He didn't have connections like this. Thomas Miller came running, up, clutching more papers from the bank. Miss Sarah found something in Pa's ledgers. The money Walker collected. It wasn't staying here. It was being moved east through a series of banks, all leading to one place. Santa Fe, Sarah finished. She studied the young man's documents, connecting threads. Your father wasn't just recording payments. He was laundering money, making it look legitimate. Ghost materialized from the shadows. Tracks I found last week. Supply wagons weren't just carrying guns. They were moving something else, something valuable. Gold, Jim suggested. Sarah shook her head. No, information. She spread the papers on a burned table. Look at these dates. Names. Walker wasn't building an empire. He was clearing territory, pushing out small ranches, honest businessmen, making way for something bigger. Railroads coming, Thomas said quietly. Pa mentioned it once. Said big money from back east was buying up land. Called it progress. Sarah's expression hardened. Progress built on blood. Walker and his gang were just the first wave, clearing out anyone who wouldn't sell, making it look like random violence, instead of organized theft. That's why they burned your saloon first, Jim realized. You were a symbol, someone who stood their ground. And now we've killed their enforcer. Sarah folded the papers carefully. Whoever's behind this, they won't let that stand. Walker was expendable. His death will just bring something worse. As if summoned by her words, a rider appeared at the end of the street. Everyone tensed, but the man carried a white flag. He was expensively dressed, out of place in the dusty town. Message for Sarah Hawkins, he called out, holding up an envelope sealed with silver-flecked wax. Sarah's hand drifted to her Remington. Mighty brave, coming here alone. My employer believes in civilized discourse. He dismounted smoothly. Even with uncivilized people, the implied insult rolled off her like water. She took the envelope, noting the quality of the paper. Inside was a single sheet written in elegant hand. Miss Hawkins, your interference in legitimate business matters is unfortunate. However, your reputation suggests you are a practical woman. $10,000 will be deposited in any bank of your choosing. In exchange, you leave the territory permanently, refuse, and we will be forced to take more direct action. As a demonstration of our resolve, consider this. We already have agents in place throughout the territory. One of them is watching you. Read this letter. You have 1 hour to decide. Regards, J.W. Sarah crumpled the letter. Tell your employer I don't take bribes. The messenger smiled thinly. Then you'll take condolences for your friend Jim Cooper's tragic accident. Sarah whirled, but it was too late. The shot came from somewhere high. Jim stumbled, red blossoming on his chest. Deadeye's rifle roared, but the hidden shooter was already gone. As Sarah tried to stem Jim's bleeding, the messenger mounted his horse. 1 hour, Miss Hawkins. Don't waste it being sentimental. He rode away, leaving Sarah with the terrible knowledge that she hadn't just killed a gang leader. She'd stumbled into something far darker. A conspiracy of wealthy men who thought they could buy or bury anyone who stood in their way. They were about to learn otherwise. Jim Cooper's blood stained Sarah's hands as she worked to save his life in the church basement. Mary Chen helped, applying pressure while Thomas Miller ran for the doctor. Outside, Deadeye and Ghost searched for the shooter, but Sarah already knew they wouldn't find them. This had been too well planned. Damn fool, Jim coughed, his voice weak. Should have seen it coming. Save your strength, Sarah ordered, but Jim grabbed her wrist with surprising force. Listen, he wheezed, there's something you need to know. About Tombstone, about why I really... His words cut off in a fit of coughing. The basement door burst. Open, Marshal Daniel Blake strode in, badge gleaming, followed by 4 deputies. Sarah heard about the shooting, came as soon as I could. Sarah's hands stilled on Jim's bandages. Something in the marshal's voice was off. Then she saw Jim's eyes go wide with recognition and fear. You! Jim gasped. You're the one who... Blake's gun barked once. Jim's body jerked, then went still. Mary screamed. Sarah reached for her Remington, but Blake's deputies already had their weapons trained on her. The marshal's face showed no emotion as he holstered his smoking gun. Had to be done, he said calmly. Cooper was about to tell you something inconvenient, about who really hired the McCullers to attack that family in Tombstone, about who made sure you'd be there to stop them. The truth hit Sarah like a physical blow. You set it up, all of it. Used me as your personal executioner. Blake nodded. Needed to establish your reputation. Shadow's Edge, the legendary bounty hunter, made tracking other targets so much easier when they were terrified of you. Why? The word came out like broken glass. Progress, Sarah. The railroad's coming. New money, new power. But first, we need to clear the land. Walker was useful but crude. You? He smiled coldly. You were art, the perfect weapon, until you decided to retire. Sarah's mind raced. All those bounties, all those kills. How many had been legitimate? How many had just been people who stood in the way of Blake's progress? The letter, she said. J.W., that's Judge Wesley, isn't it? The one who always made sure my bounties were legal. Smart girl. The judge handles the legal side. I handle enforcement. Walker handled the muscle until you killed him. Now? Blake gestured to his deputies. Now we're back to doing things officially. You'll never get away with this, Mary Chen said, cradling Jim's body. People will know. Know what? Blake cut her off. That the famous Shadow's Edge went crazy, started killing lawmen, sadly forced us to put her down. He sighed. Tomorrow's papers are already written, Sarah. Your legacy ends here, unless what? Work for us, officially this time. No more pretending you're just a bounty hunter. Help us clear the territory for civilization. Sarah looked at Jim's body, at Mary's terrified face, at the badge that had just murdered an unarmed man. I've got a counteroffer, she said quietly. Blake raised an eyebrow. Oh? Sarah's voice turned to ice. I'm going to kill you. Then I'm going to kill Wesley. Then I'm going to burn your whole corrupt empire to the ground. The marshal laughed. And how exactly do you plan to do that with 4 guns pointed at you? A knife appeared at Blake's throat. Ghost materialized from the shadows behind him, deadly as his namesake. Deadeye's voice carried from the basement window, rifle aimed. Make that 2 guns pointed at her, 2 pointed at you. Blake's face tightened. Kill me, the judge still. Wins, he's got papers, evidence. Every bounty you collected, every murder done in the name of justice, you'll hang. Maybe, Sarah agreed, drawing her Remington faster than eyes could follow. The deputies died before they could pull their triggers. But you won't be alive to see it. Sarah, wait, she didn't. The basement echoed with gunfire. Marshal Blake, the man who had twisted her legend into a tool for theft and murder, collapsed with 2 bullets in his chest. Ghost, Sarah commanded. Get Mary somewhere safe. Deadeye, we need horses, fast ones. Where are we going? Thomas asked. Sarah checked her weapons, cold purpose in every movement. Santa Fe. Time to pay Judge Wesley a visit. Show him what Shadow's Edge does to men who think they can control her. As they rode into the night, Sarah felt the weight of every kill she'd ever made. How many had been manipulated, how many innocent people had died because she trusted the wrong badge. One thing was certain. By the time she was done, the territory would understand the difference between justice and the law. And God help anyone who stood in her way. Santa Fe loomed ahead, a city of money and power, where men like Judge Wesley thought themselves untouchable. Sarah and her hunters made camp in an abandoned mine 3 miles outside town, planning what many would call suicide. Wesley's mansion sits on a hill overlooking the city, Ghost reported, sketching a rough map in the dirt. 20 guards, all former military, professional killers with government credentials. Main gates iron-plated, Deadeye added, cleaning his rifle. Walls are 12 feet high with broken glass embedded on top. Man's paranoid. Not paranoid, Sarah corrected. Guilty. She spread out papers taken from Blake's body. These detail every murder, every land grab, every corrupt deal for the past 5 years. Wesley's been building his empire on blood and bribes. Thomas Miller studied the documents, face pale. My father's name is all through these. He wasn't just recording transactions, he was helping plan them. Which is why you're staying here when we move, Sarah told him firmly. You've done enough, but no buts. Wesley's got eyes everywhere. You show up in Santa Fe, word gets back to your father. Then we lose our only advantage. Surprise! Deadeye peered through his scope toward the city. Speaking of surprise, we've got company. 6 riders approached their camp. Sarah's hand moved to her Remington, but Ghost shook his head. Friends, he said, the ones I sent for. The riders were a rough-looking bunch. Sarah recognized some from wanted posters. Men and women who'd crossed paths with her during her bounty hunting days. People who owed her their lives or their freedom. Meet the other people Wesley's tried to bury, Ghost explained. Ranchers who lost land, lawmen who wouldn't take bribes, families of people who disappeared after standing up to his schemes. A tall woman with a scarred face dismounted first. Name's Rebecca Hawthorne, she said. Wesley's men burned my ranch, killed my husband, been waiting 2 years for a chance at payback. Others introduced themselves. a former Texas Ranger fired for investigating Wesley's corruption, a Mexican vaquero whose family ranch had been stolen through forged deeds, a young woman whose father died in jail after refusing to sell his water rights. "We're not much," Rebecca admitted, "but we're all that's left of the honest people in this territory. Word is, Shadow's Edge is finally taking the fight to Wesley. We want in." Sarah studied these desperate souls. Not professional. Killers like her, hunters, but people with nothing left to lose. People who'd lost everything to Wesley's progress. "It won't be clean," she warned. "Won't be legal." Rebecca's laugh was bitter as trail coffee. "Legal? Law belongs to Wesley in these parts. Man's got judges, politicians, even the governor in his pocket. Only justice left is what we make ourselves." Sarah nodded slowly. "Ghost, show them the plans. Deadeye, start teaching anyone who can shoot how to shoot better. We move in 3 days." As her unlikely army prepared, Sarah climbed a ridge overlooking Santa Fe. The city glittered in the sunset. Beautiful and corrupt. Somewhere in that maze of money and power, Wesley sat in his mansion, thinking himself untouchable. "Quite a view," a familiar voice said behind her. Mary Chen climbed up, her baby wrapped tight against her chest. "Should be halfway to California by now," Sarah said. "Safer there." "Nowhere's safe while men like Wesley rule." Mary's voice hardened. "Jim Cooper died trying to warn you. Least I can do is see this through." Sarah touched the scar on her cheek, remembering her brother's last words, always the better killer. "Wesley won't just have guards," she said. "He'll have hostages, innocent people. Killing him means risking them, and letting him live means condemning how many more to death, to losing their homes, their families." Mary adjusted her sleeping child. "Sometimes mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent." Sarah remembered every bounty she'd collected for Wesley, every death that had served his corrupt empire. 3 days, she said finally. "Tell the others, we move in 3 days." As darkness fell over Santa Fe, Sarah began writing letters, unto each person who'd come to fight, instructions on what to do if she fell, evidence to expose Wesley's crimes, routes to escape the territory. Her own letter she kept brief. "If you're reading this, I'm dead, but if you're one of Wesley's men, know this. I trained others, taught them everything I know. The next Shadow's Edge will be smarter, deadlier, and they'll keep coming until your master's empire burns. Some legends never die, they just pass to those worthy of carrying them." 3 days to plan the end of Wesley's reign, 3 days to turn desperate survivors into an army, 3 days to prepare for a battle that would either cleanse the territory of corruption or add their names to its long list of victims. Sarah Hawkins loaded her weapons, each bullet a promise. Wesley thought he'd used her legend for his own ends. Time to show him why some legends are best left untamed. The night before the attack, an unearthly quiet settled over the rebel camp. Sarah found her hunters and allies gathered around small fires, each preparing for tomorrow in their own way. Deadeye methodically cleaned his rifle for the 10th time. Ghost sharpened his knives, the rhythmic scrape of steel on stone a meditation. Rebecca Hawthorne taught others how to move in formation, using stones to demonstrate tactics, like watching ghosts prepare for war, Mary Chen observed, joining. "Sarah by the main fire." "That's what we are," Sarah replied. "Ghosts of Wesley's victims, coming back to haunt him. They'd spent 3 days drilling, planning, preparing." Sarah had taught them everything she could about survival and killing. Now came the hardest part, waiting. Ghost materialized from the darkness. Final scout report. Wesley's having a party tomorrow night. Politicians, bankers, all his corrupt friends gathering to celebrate the railroad deal. "Perfect," Sarah said. "All our enemies in one place." "There's more." Ghost's face tightened. "He's got hostages in the cellar, families of people who opposed him. Insurance, he calls it." Sarah cursed softly. Wesley was smart, she'd give him that. Hard to attack a man when innocent lives hung in the balance. "I might have a solution." Thomas Miller spoke up. Despite orders to stay behind, he'd refused to leave. My father's one of Wesley's guests. I could attend as his son, get inside, learn where the hostages are kept. Absolutely not, Sarah began, but Thomas cut her off. Jim Cooper died trying to warn you, he said firmly. I watched Wesley's men burn down your saloon, watched them threaten Mary and her baby. I'm done hiding. Sarah studied the young man who'd once brought her flowers, seeing steel beneath the surface she'd never noticed before. You get caught, they'll kill you. Maybe. Thomas checked the revolver she'd taught him to use. But I'd rather die standing. Up than live kneeling down. A commotion at the camp's edge drew their attention. Rebecca's scouts had captured someone, a well-dressed man stumbling in the dark, found him wandering near the perimeter. Rebecca reported. Says he has a message. For you, specifically. Sarah recognized him, Judge Wesley's personal secretary. The man was terrified, but determined. Speak, she ordered. Judge Wesley sent me, he stammered. He knows you're coming, says to deliver a message. The hostages die first. The moment you attack, before you can reach them, their blood will be on your hands. Deadeye's rifle came up, but Sarah waved him down. That all? He offers a deal. Leave the territory forever. Take your hunters with you. In exchange, the hostages go free. You have 1 hour to decide. Sarah's voice turned deadly quiet. Tell Wesley I remember every person he made me kill, every bounty that served his schemes. Tell him I remember their faces, their names, their last words. She stepped closer, making the secretary flinch. Tell him that tomorrow night I'm going to remind him of each one, right before I send him to meet them. The secretary fled into the darkness. Sarah turned to her gathered allies. Wesley's scared. Trying to negotiate means we've got him worried. Or he's planning something, Ghost warned. Course he is. Sarah checked her Remingtons. That's why we're changing the plan. Thomas, you'll attend that party, but not alone. Rebecca, your people know the city. Get us servants' clothes, delivery wagons, anything that lets us slip in with the party preparations. And the hostages? Mary asked. Ghost, take your 3 best. When the shooting starts upstairs, you get those people out. Everyone else, remember? Your training. Wesley thinks he's fighting Shadow's Edge. Instead, he's fighting every person he's ever wronged. As her unlikely army made final preparations, Sarah walked alone to the ridge overlooking Santa Fe. The city's lights seemed to mock, a reminder of all the power and money lined up against them. Quite a view, Deadeye said, joining her. Good spot for covering fire. You don't have to do this, Sarah told her old friend. Any of you. This started with me. No. Deadeye's voice was firm. This started with men like Wesley thinking they could buy or bury anyone who stood against them, thinking their money made them gods. He checked his rifle's action. Time they learned different. The moon rose over Santa Fe, painting Wesley's mansion in silver light. Tomorrow it would end, one way or another. Sarah touched the key she still wore, the one to her burned saloon. Reminder of a peaceful life that men like Wesley had made impossible. Get some rest, she told Deadeye. Tomorrow we remind them. Why they used to fear the dark. But sleep wouldn't come. Sarah spent the night writing one final letter, this one to Mary Chen. If I don't make it, tell them the truth, not the legend they made me into. Tell them I was just a woman who got tired of watching evil men hurt good people. Tell them anyone can be Shadow's Edge if they're willing to stand up. And tell your son that some fights are worth dying for. Dawn approached like an executioner's blade, remorseless and final. In a few hours, Sarah Hawkins would either end Wesley's corrupt empire or join the ghosts of all those who died trying. Either way, the territory would never be the same. Judge Wesley's mansion buzzed with activity as servants prepared for the evening's celebration. No one noticed a few extra workers joining the chaos. No one paid attention to delivery wagons bringing in supplies, and certainly no one recognized The quiet woman in servant's clothes, head down, carrying linens upstairs. Sarah moved through the mansion like a ghost, mapping exits, noting guard positions. Her Remingtons were hidden beneath borrowed servants' garb, but their weight reassured her. Years of hunting had taught her to read buildings like books. This one told a story of paranoia. Armed men patrolled in pairs. Windows were reinforced. Every door had multiple locks. Wesley had built himself a fortress, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd filled it with servants who hated him. "Master likes his brandy before the party," an elderly maid whispered as Sarah passed. "Makes him sleep, half hour, maybe more." "Guests arrive at sunset," another murmured, pretending to dust. Guards change shift just before. Throughout the mansion, servants passed similar whispers. Everyone Wesley had belittled, threatened, or abused over the years, they'd been invisible to him. Now they were Sarah's eyes and ears. In the kitchen, Thomas Miller helped arrange wine glasses, playing his part perfectly. His father would arrive soon, never suspecting his son's role in what was to come. "Cellar doors guarded," he muttered, as Sarah passed. "But there's a servant's entrance, barely big enough for a child." Ghost, disguised as a gardener, confirmed the intelligence. "Found it. Can get my smallest people through. When the shooting starts, we'll have the hostages out in 3 minutes." Sarah nodded imperceptibly. Piece by piece, their plan came together. Deadeye was already in position on a distant rooftop, his rifle trained on the mansion's approaches. Rebecca's people had infiltrated the staff, ready to neutralize guards at crucial moments. But as sunset approached, Sarah felt a familiar tension. The calm before violence, the weight of knowing that soon people would die. A commotion at the front door drew her attention. Judge Wesley himself descended the main stairs, resplendent in an expensive suit. He was younger than she'd expected, handsome in a cruel way. The kind of man who'd never gotten his own hands dirty while ordering countless deaths. "Everything must be perfect," he announced to the assembled servants. "Tonight we celebrate progress, the future of this territory." His eyes passed over Sarah. Without recognition, she forced herself to bow, bile rising in her throat. This man had used her as his personal executioner, had turned her legend into a tool for theft and murder. Now he looked right through her, seeing just another servant. Perfect. As if sensing her thoughts, Wesley paused. Something made him turn back, studying the gathered staff more carefully. For a heart-stopping moment, his gaze lingered on Sarah. Then, his secretary hurried in with urgent papers, breaking the moment. Wesley turned away, never realizing death wore a servant's dress, and stood 10 feet from him. "First guests arriving, sir," the secretary announced. Wesley smiled, all charm and polish. "Excellent. The future awaits." Sarah slipped away, trading. Subtle signals with her hidden allies. Everything was in position. Soon the mansion would fill with the territory's most corrupt power brokers, all gathered to celebrate their own triumph, none of them knowing they'd walked into a trap. In the kitchen, Sarah found Mary Chen preparing appetizers. The young mothers. Hands were steady as she arranged food that would soon be forgotten. "Ready?" Sarah asked softly. Mary nodded. "The other servants know what to do when it starts. The ones with children have already left." "Good." Sarah checked the position of the sun through a window. "Half hour till full dark. Tell Ghost's people to move on the hostages the moment they hear the first shot." "Sarah," Mary hesitated. "If this works, if Wesley dies, what then? There'll be others like him." "Maybe." Sarah felt the weight of her hidden guns. "But after tonight they'll know there's a price for hurting innocent people. Know that no amount of money can protect them from justice." The sun touched the horizon, painting the mansion's windows blood red. Carriages arrived carrying bankers, politicians, corrupt officials. Each guest received a warm welcome, never noticing how the servants marked their faces, never seeing the hunters hidden in their midst. Sarah watched Wesley greet his guests, playing the gracious host. Soon his world would shatter. Soon he'd learn why smart men feared the dark. She touched the key around her neck one last time, remembering. Her saloon, her attempt at a peaceful life. After tonight, there'd be no going back. The sun set. The trap was set. Time to remind them who Shadow's Edge really was. The party was in full swing when the first shot rang out. One of Wesley's guards, patrolling the upper balcony, collapsed without a sound. Deadeye's work, precise as always. Before the body hit the floor, Sarah was moving. She shed her servants. Clothes in one fluid motion, Remingtons appearing in her hands like magic. 2 more guards died before anyone realized what was happening. Then the screaming began. "Security breach!" someone shouted. "Protect the judge!" But Wesley's security was already compromised. Throughout the mansion, servants turned on guards. With hidden weapons, Rebecca's people emerged from their disguises, cutting down Wesley's men with cold efficiency. Ghost's team was already moving toward the cellar, silent as shadows. Sarah carved through the chaos like an avenging spirit. Every shot found its mark. Every movement brought death. This wasn't the calculated violence of a bounty hunter. This was art, painted in gun smoke and blood. "Sarah," Thomas's voice cut through the din. "Father's trying to get Wesley to the study." She nodded, already moving. Around her, the battle raged. The corrupt guests who'd come to celebrate their triumph now ran like rats from a sinking ship. Some tried to fight back. Bankers with hidden derringers, politicians with pocket pistols. They died just the same. 3 guards blocked the study door. Good ones, professionals. They opened fire the moment Sarah appeared. She flowed between. The bullets like water, her return fire dropping 2 before they could blink. The third managed to nick her shoulder before a knife sprouted from his throat. Ghost, materializing from nowhere. "Hostages are safe," he reported. "Mary's getting them out through the tunnel." Sarah kicked in the study door. Wesley stood behind his massive desk, Thomas's father using him as a shield. Both men held guns. "Should have taken the deal," Wesley said, his cultured voice steady despite everything. "Could have lived a long, peaceful life somewhere else." "Peace was never an option," Sarah replied. "Not after what you made me do." "Made you?" Wesley laughed. "My dear, I simply pointed you at targets. You did the killing, quite enthusiastically, as I recall." "She was following the law," Thomas's father spoke up. "We gave her legal bounties." "Lies written on official paper," Sarah cut him off. "Used me to murder innocent people who stood in your way." More gunfire erupted from the hallway. Rebecca's voice carried. "More guards coming up the back stairs." "You're surrounded," Wesley said. "My reinforcements will be here any minute, but I'm a reasonable man. Surrender now. I'll let your friends live." Sarah's laugh was cold as a desert night. "You still don't understand. There is no surrender, no deals, no walking away." Her eyes locked onto his. "You're going to die tonight, Judge. Only question is how many of your friends I take with you." Wesley's composure cracked. "Miller! Kill her!" Thomas's father raised his gun and found his own son's revolver pressed against his head. "Sorry, Pa," Thomas said quietly. "Had to choose between family and right." The moment's distraction was all Sarah needed. Her first shot knocked Wesley's gun away, taking 2 fingers with it. Her second put a bullet through Thomas's father's shoulder, dropping him. Wesley scrambled back, clutching his bleeding hand. "Wait, I have money. Connections. I can what?" Sarah advanced, merciless as destiny. "Can bribe me like you bribed. The law can threaten more innocent people." She kicked his desk aside. "Or maybe you'll tell me how it was all for progress, for civilization." Outside, the gunfire was dying down. Sarah's people had won. Wesley heard it too, saw his death in her eyes. "You think killing me changes anything?" he spat. "There will be others. Progress can't be stopped by one revenge-obsessed woman." "This isn't about revenge." Sarah's voice was terrifyingly calm. This is justice. For every person you had me kill, for every family you destroyed, for every lie you dressed up as law. Then do it! Wesley spread his arms. Pull the trigger, prove you're just another killer. Sarah's Remington roared once. Wesley collapsed, clutching his gut, a wound that would kill him, but slowly. A killer would make it quick, she said, softly, but I want you to have time. Time to remember every person whose death you ordered, every life you ruined. She turned to Thomas. Watch him. Make sure he doesn't die too fast. Thomas kept his gun trained on his father and Wesley while Sarah moved to the window. Below, the battle's aftermath spread out like a grim painting. Dead guards littered the grounds. Surviving party guests were being rounded up. Evidence gathered, Rebecca appeared in the doorway, blood staining her shirt. Got them all. Every corrupt official, every crooked banker. Ghost is already copying their documents. By morning, the whole territory will know what they did. Good. Sarah holstered one Remington. And the hostages? Safe. Mary got them to the church. Town's already starting to hear the truth. Wesley coughed wetly. Truth? The only truth is power. Someone else will take my place, continue my work. Maybe. Sarah turned back to him, but they'll do it knowing that Shadow's Edge is watching, knowing that no amount of money can save them from justice. As if to punctuate her words, Deadeye's rifle cracked once more. The last of Wesley's reinforcements died before reaching the mansion. It's over, Sarah said, not sure if she was telling Wesley or herself. The territory's going to change, but not your way, not through corruption and murder. She looked at Thomas, who stood straight despite tears running down his face. At Rebecca, wearing her scars like badges of honor. At Ghost, silent and deadly in the shadows. At Mary Chen, who appeared in the doorway with news that all the hostages were safe. These were her real legacy. Not the legend of Shadow's Edge, but the people who'd found the courage to stand against evil, to fight for justice when the law was corrupted. Wesley died as the first light of dawn touched his window. He died knowing his empire was finished, died watching everything he'd built crumble to dust. Sarah Hawkins, the woman they'd called Shadow's Edge, watched the sun rise over Santa Fe. There would be consequences, investigations, questions. But for now, there was only the knowledge that justice had finally been served. The legend of Shadow's Edge would live on, not as Wesley's weapon, but as a warning to corrupt men who thought their money made them untouchable. A reminder that in this territory, some things were still worth fighting for, some things were still worth killing for. A week after Wesley's death, Sarah stood in the ruins of her saloon. Workers were already clearing debris, preparing to rebuild, but she knew she wouldn't be staying. You could, you know, Mary Chen said, reading her thoughts. Town needs you. Town needs peace, Sarah replied. Can't have that with Shadow's Edge around. The aftermath of Wesley's fall had shaken the territory like an earthquake. Ghost's recovered documents had exposed corruption at every level. Arrests were still being made. Stolen lands returned. Justice, slow but sure, was grinding forward. Thomas Miller approached, looking older but stronger. Fathers agreed to testify. Says he wants to make things right. Good. Sarah checked her saddlebags. Her weapons were cleaned, oiled, ready. Territory's changing. Needs honest men now, not killers. Rebecca Hawthorne rode up with news from Santa Fe. Railroad's still coming, but they're negotiating fair prices now. Amazing what honest officials can accomplish. Deadeye appeared on the saloon's porch, rifle slung over his shoulder. Got word of trouble down Mexico way. Another Wesley type causing problems. There's always another, Sarah said quietly. Always someone who thinks money puts them above justice. She mounted her horse, feeling the familiar weight of her guns. The morning sun painted the desert gold, the same sun that had watched her try to build a peaceful life here. What should we tell people? Thomas asked. About Shadow's Edge? Sarah considered this. Tell them the truth, that justice doesn't always wear a badge, that some legends aren't about the killing, they're about standing up when standing up seems impossible. Mary stepped forward, her child sleeping peacefully in her arms. Will you come back? Maybe, when the territory doesn't need Shadow's Edge anymore, when justice and law mean the same thing again. She turned her horse south toward the distant mountains. Behind her, Paradise Wells was already changing. The corrupt had fled or faced justice. Honest people were rebuilding. Her legend would live on, but not as Wesley's weapon, as a warning to those who'd abuse power. One more thing, she called back. Tell them Shadow's Edge wasn't just one person. It was everyone who fought back, everyone who chose justice over fear. As she rode into the rising sun, Sarah Hawkins felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She'd probably never know how many innocent people she'd killed, serving Wesley's schemes. That burden would always be hers to bear. But she'd found a way to make it right. Found a way to turn a legend built on death into something that protected life. Found people willing to stand up against corruption no matter the cost. The desert wind carried whispers of other towns, other corrupt men who needed to learn why smart people still feared the dark. Sarah checked her guns and smiled. Some legends never die. They just find new ways to serve justice. 1 year later, a new saloon stood where the desert rose had burned, made of stone this time, stronger than before. The Edge, they called it now, though its owner never spoke about how it got its name. Mary Chen ran the place, her young son playing with wooden horses behind the bar. The walls bore no wanted posters, but if you looked carefully, you might spot an ace of spades carved subtly into the bar top, a reminder of who had made this piece possible. Thomas Miller, now the bank's honest manager, sat at his usual table. The newspaper he read spoke of another corrupt land baron brought down in Mexico. No witnesses, they said, just playing cards left on the bodies. Heard anything? Mary asked him quietly, pouring his usual drink. Ghost passed through last week, Thomas replied. Says she's still out there, still hunting. A stranger walked in, trail-worn and dangerous, the kind that once would have terrorized such a peaceful establishment. But he stopped at the door, spotting that carved ace of spades. His hand, drifting toward his gun, quickly moved away. Smart man, Rebecca Hawthorne said from her corner table. She wore a deputy's badge now, the first female law officer in the territory. Buy you a drink? The stranger nodded gratefully, tension leaving his shoulders. The Edge had a reputation, a place where violence wasn't tolerated, where justice meant more than law, where even the roughest cowboys behaved themselves. Outside, the desert wind carried whispers of Shadow's Edge, not just of a killer anymore, but of hope, of someone who stood against corruption when standing seemed impossible, of a legend that taught people to fight back. In the distance, a lone rider paused on a ridge overlooking Paradise Wells. Sarah Hawkins watched her old town, to prosper knowing she could never return, but she smiled. Seeing the peace she'd helped create, there would always be corrupt men, always be battles worth fighting, but now people knew that justice wore many faces, that some legends served the light by walking in darkness. Sarah checked her guns, hearing word of another town that needed Shadow's Edge. The desert sun painted her shadow long across the sand as she rode on. Some called her a killer, some called her a hero. Truth was, she was just a woman who'd learned that peace sometimes had to be earned with violence, that some fights were worth the cost. Behind her, the Edge's lights glowed warm against the gathering dark, a beacon of hope, a warning to evil men, a reminder that somewhere out there Shadow's Edge was still hunting and always would be.